The stagecoach rattled into San Pedro, California, on a scorching afternoon in August of 1878, and Ethan Xavier knew immediately that something was wrong with the woman stepping down from it because she moved like someone who had learned to make herself small in a world that punished her for existing. She wore a high-necked dress despite the brutal heat, long sleeves buttoned tight at her wrists, and a bonnet that shadowed most of her face. Her carpetbag looked like it had seen better days, held together with hope and fraying rope, and when she finally lifted her eyes to scan the dusty street, Ethan saw the fear there, sharp and bright as broken glass. He had been leaning against the post outside Miller's General Store, waiting for his order of fence wire when the stage arrived. San Pedro was a small coastal town where the railroad had not yet reached, dependent on shipping and ranching, and the arrival of the twice-weekly stage was still enough of an event to draw a few curious onlookers. Ethan had not been particularly interested until he saw her, and then something in his chest twisted hard. She was younger than he had expected. The letters they had exchanged over the past 4 months had been proper and careful, revealing little beyond the practical details of arrangement. Eleanor Winters, 22 years old, originally from Kansas, seeking a fresh start in California. Ethan, 27, owner of a modest ranch 5 miles outside town, looking for a wife to share the work and the life he was building. It had all seemed straightforward on paper. Nothing about the woman standing in the dust looked straightforward. She spotted him, recognition flickering across her face. He had sent a photograph, stiff and formal, taken in town 6 months ago. He stepped forward, removing his hat, suddenly aware of the dust on his boots and the sweat dampening his shirt collar. "Miss Winters?" His voice came out rougher than intended. "Mr. Xavier." She did not offer her hand, clutching the carpetbag tighter instead. Up close, he could see the edge of a bruise along her jawline, yellow-green with age, disappearing beneath the high collar of her dress. Another mark shadowed her left temple. His jaw tightened. "Welcome to San Pedro. I have the wagon just over there. We can head out to the ranch whenever you are ready." "I am ready now." Her voice was quiet but steady, carrying an accent that spoke of education and refinement that did not match the desperation in her posture. Ethan retrieved her trunk from the stagecoach driver, surprised by how light it was. Everything this woman owned apparently fit in one small trunk and a carpet bag. He loaded it into the back of his wagon, then helped her up onto the seat. She flinched when he took her elbow, a quick involuntary movement that she tried to cover, but he had seen it. The ride out of town passed in uncomfortable silence. Ethan had never been good with words, more comfortable with horses and cattle than conversation, but the quiet felt wrong. She sat rigid beside him, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead as if afraid to look at him directly. The coastal road wound through dry hills covered in golden grass and scattered oak trees. The ocean lay to the west, visible in flashes of blue between the rises. It was beautiful country, and Ethan had never tired of it since coming here 3 years ago, leaving behind the crowded cities of the East. "It is not much," he finally said, nodding toward the landscape. "The ranch, I mean. About 200 acres, mostly grazing land. I have got around 50 head of cattle right now, a few horses. There is a house, needs some work, but it is solid. A barn, chicken coop, vegetable garden that has been neglected since my mother passed last winter." "Your mother lived with you?" "She did. Came west with me after my father died. It was just the two of us." He paused, throat tight with the old grief. "She would have liked having another woman around. She said this country was too lonely for one person." Eleanor was silent for a long moment. "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you." He glanced at her, taking in the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself as if expecting a blow. "Miss Winters, I want you to know that the arrangement we made through letters, it still stands. You can take your time, settle in. We do not have to rush into anything. I just thought we both needed something, and maybe we could help each other out." She turned to look at him fully for the first time. Her eyes were a striking shade of green, sharp with intelligence despite the wariness. What do you need, Mr. Xavier? The directness caught him off guard. A partner, I suppose. Someone to build something with. The ranch is growing, but it is too much for one person, and I got tired of eating my own cooking. He tried for a smile, hoping to ease the tension. The corner of her mouth lifted barely, but it was something. And what do you think I need? I do not presume to know, but I figure you would not have traveled all the way from Kansas if you were not looking for something different than what you had. Her expression shuddered again, and she looked away. Yes, something different. They crested a hill, and the ranch came into view below. It was modest, but well maintained. The house a simple wooden structure with a covered porch, painted white with green trim. The barn stood larger than the house, sturdy and red. Fencing marked out paddocks and pastures, and a windmill turned lazily in the afternoon breeze, pumping water into a trough where several horses clustered in the shade. Here we are, Ethan said, guiding the wagon down the rutted drive. Eleanor studied the property with an expression he could not read. It is nice, she said finally. Better than I expected. What did you expect? I did not know what to expect. That was part of the problem. She looked at him again, and he saw something raw in her face. Mr. Xavier, I need to tell you something before we go any further. I am not, that is, I may not be exactly what you were expecting either. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and set the brake. Why do not we go inside, get you settled, and we can talk properly? You have had a long journey. She nodded, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. He helped her down, careful not to touch her more than necessary, and carried her trunk inside. The house was clean. He had made sure of that, but it had the spare feeling of a place where only one person lived. The main room served as kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace at one end and a cast-iron stove at the other. Two doors led to the bedrooms, his and the one that had been his mother's. You will have the room there, he said, nodding to the left door. It has a lock on the inside. I want you to feel safe here, Miss Winters. That is important to me. She looked at him with those sharp green eyes, searching his face for something. Why? Because you clearly have not been safe before, and that is not right. Her breath caught, and for a moment he thought she might cry, but she controlled herself, chin lifting. Thank you, she whispered. He set her trunk in the bedroom, noting the simple furnishings his mother had left behind. A bed with a quilt, a dresser, a washstand, a rocking chair by the window. Eleanor followed him in, setting down her carpet bag. I will give you some time to freshen up, Ethan said. There is water in the pitcher, and I will heat more if you want a proper wash. Take whatever time you need. I will be outside tending to the horses. He left her there, closing the door behind him, and stood for a moment in the main room, trying to organize his thoughts. Whatever he had expected from this arrangement, it had not been this. The woman who had stepped off that stage was running from something. That much was clear. The Bruises told a story he did not need spelled out. Outside, he unhitched the wagon and led the horses to the barn, going through the familiar motions of their care. The physical work helped settle his mind. He had made a promise in those letters, carefully worded but sincere. He had offered a life, a home, a partnership. He had not promised love because he was not sure he believed in such things anymore, not after watching his mother waste away with grief after his father's death. But he had promised respect, honesty, and a fair shake. Looking at Eleanor Winters and her old bruises, he made a silent promise to himself. She would never get new ones. Not here. Not from him. Not from anyone if he could help it. When he returned to the house an hour later, dusk was falling, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Eleanor had emerged from the bedroom, her dress changed to a slightly less formal one, though still high-necked and long-sleeved. She had removed her bonnet, revealing dark brown hair pulled back in a simple bun. The bruise on her temple was more visible now, along with what looked like a fading mark on her cheekbone. She was standing in the kitchen area, looking uncertain. I was not sure if I should start on supper. I did not know what you had planned. I have not planned much beyond getting you here safely, Ethan admitted. But I am a fair hand at basic cooking if you are tired, or we can work on it together. Together would be good. She moved to the stove, examining the pots and pans hanging there. I am a decent cook. My mother taught me before she died. When was that? 10 years ago. I was 12. She said it matter-of-factly, but there was old pain in the words. After that, it was just my father and me until I was 18. Then I married. She had not mentioned a husband in her letters. Ethan felt something cold settle in his gut. You are married? Widowed. She did not look at him. 6 months ago. That is when I decided to answer your advertisement. I am sorry, he said, though he was not entirely sure that was the right response given the bruises. Eleanor did look at him then, and there was bitter understanding in her expression. You do not have to be. Martin was not a good man. I will not lie and pretend to grieve him. He fell off his horse drunk and broke his neck, and I felt nothing but relief. The honesty was startling. Ethan respected her for it. Did he do that to you? He gestured vaguely at her face. Yes, and worse. But he is gone now, and I am here, and I would very much like to never speak of him again if that is acceptable to you. More than acceptable. Ethan moved to the pantry, pulling out flour, beans, salt pork. Fresh start, then. Clean slate. We figure out what we are to each other without any ghosts getting in the way. Can we really do that? Her voice was so quiet he almost missed it. We can try. They made supper together, falling into an awkward but functional rhythm. Eleanor was indeed a good cook, much better than him, and she took charge of the beans and cornbread while he fried the salt pork. They did not talk much, but it was a more comfortable silence than the ride from town had been. Over the simple meal, Ethan told her about the ranch, the daily routines, the plans he had for expansion. She listened carefully, asking intelligent questions that showed she was thinking about how to fit into this new life. I can handle the chickens, she offered, and the garden. I am good with plants. My grandmother had an herb garden, and I learned from her before she passed. That would be a help. I am useless with anything that is not an animal. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Miss Winters, Eleanor, I know this is an unusual situation. We are essentially strangers who have agreed to link our lives based on some letters and a photograph. I do not expect you to be a wife to me in all senses right away. Or ever, if that is not what you want. What I need most is someone I can trust to work alongside me, to help build something here. The rest we can figure out as we go. Or not. Whatever feels right. She set down her fork, her eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone like Martin, someone who would see me as property, as something bought and paid for. I expected to trade one prison for another, but I had nowhere else to go. No money, no family. His family took everything after he died. They said I was not entitled to anything because I had not given him children. Her voice broke slightly. I could not. He made sure of that. I was too afraid, too hurt all the time. Ethan felt rage, hot and sharp, at a man he had never met and could never confront. He forced it down, keeping his voice steady. You are not property. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be. And I meant what I said. We take this at whatever pace feels right. There is no obligation beyond what we both agree to. Why? She searched his face desperately. Why are you being kind? What do you want from me? Honestly, companionship, help with the work, someone to talk to at the end of a long day, maybe eventually a family, if that is something we both want, and if we grow to care for each other. But I have got no interest in forcing anything. Life is hard enough without making it harder for the people around us. Eleanor wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I do not know how to do this, how to be around someone who does not want to hurt me. Then we will learn together. I have not exactly had much practice at partnership either. He managed a rueful smile. We can be a disaster together instead of separately. That has got to count for something. She laughed, a watery sound but genuine. It transformed her face, making her look younger, less haunted. I suppose it does. They finished the meal in a more relaxed silence, and Eleanor insisted on cleaning up. Ethan did not argue, sensing she needed the normalcy of routine tasks. He sat at the table, pretending to read a week-old newspaper from town while actually watching her move around the kitchen. She was graceful despite the obvious pain she still carried in her body, efficient in her movements. When the kitchen was clean, she turned to him, hands folded. I think I will retire for the night, if that is acceptable. The journey was long. Of course. Sleep as late as you need. We keep early hours here, but there is no rush for you to adjust immediately. Thank you, Mr. Xavier. Ethan, please, just Ethan. Ethan. She tested the name, then nodded. Good night. Good night, Eleanor. He watched her disappear into the bedroom, heard the quiet click of the lock engaging. He did not blame her. Trust would take time, if it came at all. He sat there for a long while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the wind in the eaves, and thought about the responsibility he had taken on. This was more than he had bargained for, but walking away was not in his nature. His father had taught him that you saw things through, especially when someone was depending on you. The next morning, Ethan woke before dawn, as usual, dressed quietly, and went out to start the chores. He fed the horses, mucked the stalls, and was heading to check on the cattle when he saw Eleanor emerge from the house. She wore a different dress, still concealing, but she had a shawl around her shoulders and a determined set to her jaw. Good morning, she called. I was hoping to see the chickens, if you could show me where they are. Morning. Sure, they are over here. He led her to the coop, where a dozen hens scratched and pecked in the early light. They are pretty self-sufficient, but they need feeding, and the eggs collected daily. I will admit I have been neglecting them lately. Eleanor approached the coop with more confidence than she had shown for anything else. She crouched down, making soft clucking noises, and several of the hens came to investigate her. They are good birds, healthy looking. I will take care of them. Appreciate it. He watched her interact with the chickens, noting the ease in her movements. This was something she knew, something that brought her comfort. I have got to ride out and check the herd, make sure none have wandered off or gotten into trouble. I will be back by midday. Will you be all right here? She straightened, meeting his eyes. Yes, I will be fine. I need to get used to the place, and I prefer to do that alone, if you do not mind. Do not mind at all. There is food in the pantry. Help yourself to anything. The well is there by the windmill if you need fresh water. And Eleanor? He waited until she looked at him fully. If anyone comes by, anyone at all, you do not have to open the door. You do not owe anyone anything. This is your home. Understanding flickered across her face. Thank you. He saddled his horse, a steady bay gelding named Copper, and rode out into the hills as the sun climbed higher. The work of checking the herd was familiar and soothing, requiring attention, but not intense thought. It gave him time to process the situation he found himself in. He had expected a mail-order bride to be a practical arrangement, someone who needed security and was willing to work for it, while he gained a partner in building his ranch. What he had gotten was a woman with wounds deeper than the fading bruises on her skin, someone who flinched at kindness and did not know how to accept it. But there was something else there too, underneath the fear. Strength. Intelligence. A dry humor that had peeked through over supper. Eleanor Winters had survived something terrible and had the courage to leave it behind, to travel alone to a place she had never seen, to meet a man she knew only through letters. That took a kind of bravery he respected. He found the cattle scattered across the grazing land, all accounted for. 2 calves had been born since he checked last, both healthy and strong. He made mental notes about which cows would need to be moved to fresh pasture soon, which fences needed mending. The work never ended, but that was fine. He liked having purpose. When he returned to the ranch house around noon, he found Eleanor in the vegetable garden behind the house. She had changed into an older dress, the sleeves rolled up despite the sun, and was on her knees in the dirt, pulling weeds from around struggling tomato plants. A basket beside her held several eggs and some herbs she had apparently found growing wild. She looked up as he approached, shading her eyes. There was color in her cheeks now, and the set of her shoulders was less defensive. This garden has good bones. It just needs attention. I can have it producing properly by next season if I start now. My mother would be glad to hear that. She put a lot of work into it before she got too sick. He dismounted, tying Copper to the porch rail. How are you doing? Better than yesterday. The work helps. She stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. I collected the eggs and found some wild mint and sage. I thought I might make something decent for supper if you have got a chicken we could spare. We do. I will handle that part. Killing chickens was not a task he enjoyed, but it was necessary, and he had no intention of asking Eleanor to do it. Give me an hour to finish up with the horse, and I will have one ready for you. They fell into a routine over the following days and weeks. Ethan handled the heavy labor of the ranch, the cattle, the horses, the fencing, and repairs. Eleanor took charge of the chickens, the garden, the cooking, and the mending. They worked around each other carefully at first, still learning the rhythms and boundaries. Slowly, Eleanor began to relax. The bruises faded completely, though Ethan sometimes caught her rubbing at her ribs or favoring one side in a way that suggested deeper hurts. She did not speak of them, and he did not press. Instead, he made sure she had what she needed: good food, time to rest, space to heal. She was smart, he discovered. She had been a teacher before her marriage, had read extensively, and had opinions on everything from politics to philosophy. In the evenings after supper, they began to talk more, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. She made him laugh with dry observations about the chickens' personalities. He surprised her with his knowledge of poetry, learned from his mother's insistence on evening readings. I took you for a practical man, Eleanor said one evening, nearly a month after her arrival. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the distant ocean. I did not expect you to quote Whitman. My mother believed that ranching was no excuse for ignorance. She made sure I could read more than just bills of sale. He rocked slowly in his chair, comfortable with her in a way that had snuck up on him. What about you? You said you were a teacher. For 2 years before I married. I loved it. Her voice carried a wistfulness that made his chest ache. I taught reading and arithmetic to children in a one-room schoolhouse. Martin made me stop after the wedding. He said it was not proper for his wife to work. That is a waste. You are good at explaining things. He had noticed this when she showed him a better method for preserving vegetables, patiently walking him through each step. Maybe someday I could do it again. Are there any schools in San Pedro? There is one, but I think the teacher is settled. Could be they would take help, though. Or maybe you could teach some of the ranch family's children. A few of my neighbors have young ones who do not get much schooling. She turned to look at him, hope bright in her eyes. Do you think they would trust me? I do not see why not. You are a respectable married woman now. He said it without thinking, then realized what he had said. That is, we are not actually married yet. I did not mean to presume. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, and he cursed himself for bringing it up. They had been dancing around the topic since she arrived, both aware that the original plan had been for a quick marriage once she reached California. Ethan, she said finally, her voice careful, why have you not pressed the issue? Most men would have insisted we marry immediately. Some would not have bothered with marriage at all, given the circumstances. Because you are not ready, and I am not interested in a wife who is only going through the motions out of obligation or fear. What if I am never ready? What if I am too broken for this? He looked at her directly, making sure she heard him. You are not broken. Hurt, yes. Scared, I can see that. But not broken. You are one of the strongest people I have met, Eleanor Winters. You got yourself out of a bad situation and had the courage to start over. That is not broken. That is brave. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and she did not bother wiping them away. I do not feel brave. Brave people rarely do. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently took her hand. She stiffened but did not pull away. We will take this at your pace. I am not going anywhere. She turned her hand in his, gripping his fingers. I think I would like to marry you, Ethan. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you have been kind when you did not have to be, and because I trust you. But I do not know if I can be a wife in all the ways that means. We will figure it out together. He squeezed her hand gently. No rush, no pressure. We will get married when you are ready, and everything else can come in its own time. What if everything else never comes? Then it does not. I would rather have you here as a true partner and friend than have all the trappings of marriage without the trust and care that should come with it. She leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust that made his throat tight. How did you get to be this way? My parents loved each other. Really loved each other. Not just the practical partnership kind. I grew up watching my father treat my mother like she hung the moon, and her doing the same for him. When he died, she grieved like half her soul had been torn away. I figured if I ever married, I wanted something like that or nothing at all. Anything less seemed like a lie. I do not know if I know how to love like that. Martin never loved me, and I certainly did not love him. My parents were both gone before I was old enough to really understand their relationship. Then maybe we learn together. He said it simply, as if it were the easiest thing in the world. They sat together as the stars came out, hands linked, and something shifted between them. The careful distance they had been maintaining began to close, replaced by something warmer, more genuine. 2 weeks later, Eleanor brought up marriage again. They were working together in the garden, her directing him on where to place new stakes for the tomato plants that were finally thriving under her care. I think we should do it, she said abruptly. Do what? Get married. Properly. I have been thinking about it, and I want to. I feel ready. Ethan sat back on his heels, studying her. She met his eyes steadily, no fear there, just determination. You are sure? There is no rush. I am sure. You have kept your word about everything else. I trust you will keep it about this too. What word is that? That I will never get new bruises. That this is a partnership. That we figure it out together. She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. I want to be your wife, Ethan. Truly. I want to build this life with you. He stood, pulling her to her feet, and for the first time, he kissed her. It was gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not. Instead, she leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, and kissed him back with a tentative sweetness that made his heart ache. When they broke apart, she was breathless but smiling. Yes, that is good. We should do more of that. He laughed, something bright and free loosening in his chest. I am amenable to that plan. They married the following week in the small church in San Pedro, with the minister and his wife as witnesses. Eleanor wore a simple dress she had sewn herself from fabric Ethan bought her in town, pale blue that brought out her eyes. She had filled out in the weeks since her arrival, no longer quite so thin, and the haunted look had faded from her face. Ethan wore his best suit, the one he had been married in before, though that thought he pushed firmly aside. This was different. This was real. The ceremony was brief. the words familiar but weighted with new meaning. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed Eleanor softly, a promise rather than a claim, and she smiled against his lips. They had a small celebration at the ranch with a few neighbors Ethan had invited. Eleanor was nervous about meeting people, but she handled it with grace, accepting congratulations and well wishes with quiet dignity. The neighboring rancher, Tom Miller, brought his wife Sarah, who took Eleanor aside and spoke with her kindly, offering friendship and help if it was ever needed. She has had a hard time, Sarah said to Ethan quietly while Eleanor was distracted. But she is strong. You did a good thing giving her a place to land. She is the one doing me a favor, Ethan replied, watching Eleanor laugh at something another neighbor had said. She has brought life back to this place. When the guests finally left and the sun was setting, Ethan and Eleanor stood together on the porch, her hand in his. Are you happy? He asked. She considered the question seriously, as she did everything. I am. I did not think I could be, but I am. You have given me something I did not know existed. What is that? Safety, peace, a chance to be myself without fear. She turned to him, rising on her toes to kiss him. Thank you. That night, they came together as husband and wife in full truth, and it was nothing like Eleanor had known before. Ethan was patient and gentle, attuned to her every hesitation, making sure she felt safe and cherished. When she cried afterward, he held her and let her process all the emotions, understanding that these were not tears of pain but of release. I did not know it could be like that, she whispered against his chest. It should always be like that. Something shared, something good. He stroked her hair, marveling at the trust she had placed in him. I will never hurt you, Eleanor. I swear it. I know. I believe you. The months that followed were the happiest of Ethan's life. The ranch thrived under their combined efforts. Eleanor's garden produced bountifully, and she began preserving and canning for the winter. She took over the chickens completely and expanded their numbers, selling eggs in town for extra income. She had a knack for business that surprised him, tracking their finances with careful attention and suggesting improvements he had not considered. In the evenings, they sat together and talked, read aloud, or simply enjoyed the comfortable silence of two people who fit together well. They made love frequently, Eleanor growing more confident and joyful in her own body, discovering pleasure she had not known possible. Winter came, mild by the standards of the places they had both come from, but wet and gray. Eleanor loved it, the drama of storms rolling in off the ocean, the way the hills turned green with new grass. She walked in the rain, laughing, and dragged Ethan out to dance with her in a downpour, both of them soaked and giddy. You are going to catch your death, he protested, though he was laughing too. No, I am going to live. She spun in his arms, face tilted to the sky. For the first time in years, I am really living. In early spring, Eleanor realized she was pregnant. She told Ethan one evening after supper, nervous despite everything, still carrying some fear from her first marriage. I am going to have a baby, she said, watching his face carefully. Ethan felt joy surge through him, bright and overwhelming. Eleanor, that is wonderful. He pulled her close, mindful of being gentle. Are you happy about it? I am. Terrified, but happy. I did not think I could after everything. The doctor I saw after Martin died said there was no reason I could not, but I did not dare hope. We will take good care of you, whatever you need. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. A baby. We are going to have a baby. She laughed, some of the nervousness fading. Yes, we are. In about 6 months, if I am calculating correctly. We should get Sarah to come by, have her check on you. She has had 4 of her own. She will know what to do. Eleanor agreed, and Sarah became a regular visitor, bringing advice and companionship. She and Eleanor developed a genuine friendship, another healing thing for Eleanor, who had been isolated during her first marriage. The pregnancy progressed well. Eleanor was sick in the mornings for the first few months, but otherwise healthy and strong. Ethan found himself constantly amazed by her, the way she continued to work in the garden and tend to the house even as her belly grew, the joy that seemed to radiate from her now. In October of 1879, Eleanor went into labor on a clear, cool evening. Sarah came immediately, bringing her eldest daughter to help. Ethan was banished to the porch, where he paced anxiously, listening to the sounds from inside the house and feeling utterly useless. It was a long night. When dawn broke, he heard the thin wail of a baby, and his heart stopped. Then Sarah appeared in the doorway, smiling. "You have a son, a big, healthy boy, and Eleanor is doing wonderfully." Ethan rushed inside to find Eleanor propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle. He approached slowly, overcome with emotion, and looked down at his son for the first time. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was red-faced from crying, but to Ethan, he was perfect. "He is beautiful," Ethan whispered. "You are amazing." Eleanor smiled up at him, tears of joy on her cheeks. "We made him together. This perfect little person. I never thought I could have this. What should we name him?" They had discussed names, going back and forth. Eleanor had wanted to honor Ethan's father. "Edward," she said now, certain. "Edward Xavier." "Eddie." "Eddie," Ethan repeated, testing it. He reached down to gently touch his son's tiny fist, marveling when the baby gripped his finger. "Hello, Eddie. Welcome to the world." The months after Eddie's birth were exhausting and wonderful. Eleanor took to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else, though she was terrified at first, sure she would do something wrong. Ethan helped whenever he could, walking the floor with a crying baby in the middle of the night, changing diapers, doing whatever Eleanor needed. Eddie thrived, growing bigger and more alert each day. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's stubborn chin. He was curious about everything, always watching, and started smiling early, which melted both his parents completely. "I cannot believe he is ours," Eleanor said one evening, nursing Eddie while Ethan sat beside her. "Sometimes I have to remind myself that this is real, that I am allowed to be this happy." "You are allowed," Ethan said firmly. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Eleanor. You have worked for it, fought for it. We both have." She reached out to take his hand. "I could not have done this without you. You saved me, Ethan." "No, you saved yourself. I just gave you a safe place to land." As Eddie grew into a toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Ethan expanded the herd, bought more land, and hired a young man from town to help with the heavy work. Eleanor started teaching the children of neighboring ranches, holding lessons twice a week in their main room. She loved it, the sense of purpose it gave her beyond her family. 2 years after Eddie was born, Eleanor found herself pregnant again. This time she was less frightened, more confident in her body and the life they had built. Ethan was overjoyed, though worried about her, remembering how exhausting one child had been. "We will manage," Eleanor assured him. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time, and I have you, which is more than most have." Their daughter was born in the spring of 1882, an easier birth than Eddie's had been. She was small and delicate, with wispy blonde hair and her father's blue eyes. They named her Emma, and Eddie, now almost 3, was fascinated by his little sister. The house felt full now, alive with the sounds of children and laughter. Ethan sometimes had to stop and look around, overwhelmed by how much his life had changed in 4 years. From a lonely widower working a struggling ranch to a husband and father with a thriving homestead and a family he loved more than anything. Eleanor bloomed in this life. The frightened, bruised woman who had stepped off the stage was gone, replaced by someone confident and joyful. She still had moments when old fears surfaced, times when a raised voice or sudden movement would make her flinch, but they were fewer and farther between. Ethan was always there to remind her she was safe, that this was real and lasting. When Emma was 6 months old, a stranger rode up to the ranch one afternoon. Ethan was in the barn and saw him coming, a well-dressed man on an expensive horse. Something about him set Ethan on edge immediately. "Can I help you?" Ethan called, moving to intercept him before he could reach the house. The man dismounted, looking around with an air of disdain. "I am looking for Eleanor Winters. I was told she might be here." "Who is asking?" "Martin's brother, Harold Wells. Eleanor was married to my brother before he died, and there are some legal matters that need to be settled." Ethan felt cold dread wash over him. "She is not Winters anymore. She is my wife, Eleanor Xavier. And as far as I know, all legal matters were settled when she left Kansas." Harold's expression hardened. "That is a matter of interpretation. Martin had debts, and as his widow, Eleanor is responsible for them. I have come to collect." "She does not owe you anything. Your family took everything she had after Martin died. You have got no claim here. I have got a legal document that says otherwise." Harold pulled papers from his coat. "Debts in the amount of $500, owed by Martin Wells at the time of his death. His widow is liable." "Let me see that." Ethan took the papers, scanning them quickly. They looked official, stamped and signed, claiming debts to various creditors. But something did not feel right. "This is dated 3 years ago. Why are you only coming forward now?" "It took time to track her down. She left without informing anyone of her whereabouts." Harold's smile was cold. "But we found her eventually. She owes this money, and I intend to collect it." Eleanor appeared in the doorway of the house, Eddie on her hip and Emma in a sling across her chest. She went pale when she saw Harold. "You," she breathed. "Hello, Eleanor. You are looking well. Better than you have any right to, considering you ran out on your obligations." Ethan moved to stand between them. "Get off my property. Now. Not until this matter is settled. $500, or I will take it to the law." "The law?" Ethan laughed harshly. "You think you can intimidate us with threats? That document looks like it was drawn up yesterday. I am betting if we take it to a judge, it will fall apart under scrutiny." Harold's expression darkened. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I am calling you a cheat and a bully, same as your brother was, from what I have heard." Ethan took a step forward. "You have got no claim here. Eleanor does not owe you anything. Now leave, before I make you leave. You are making a mistake. I will be back with the law. You do that, and I will be ready with a lawyer who will tear your fake documents apart." Ethan waited until Harold mounted his horse. "And if you come near my wife or my children again, you will regret it." Harold rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and malice behind him. Ethan turned to find Eleanor shaking, her face white. He went to her immediately, guiding her back inside, taking Eddie from her arms. "He is gone. He cannot hurt you. He will come back. Harold is worse than Martin was, more cunning. He always resented that I got anything at all from the marriage, even though his family took it all anyway." Eleanor sank into a chair, clutching Emma. "What if he really does have legal grounds? What if he can take something from us?" "He cannot. Those documents are forgeries, I'm sure of it. And even if by some chance they are real, we will fight it." Ethan crouched in front of her, taking her free hand. "You are not alone in this, Eleanor. We have resources, friends, legal protections you did not have before. He cannot touch you here." Over the next week, Ethan made good on his word. He rode into San Pedro and consulted with the town's lawyer, a sharp older man named Raymond Fuller. Fuller examined the documents Harold had brought and confirmed Ethan's suspicions. "These are fraudulent," Fuller said flatly. "The dates do not match, the stamps are wrong, and half the creditors listed do not exist. This Harold Wells is trying to extort money from your wife based on lies. Can we prosecute him?" "We can, More importantly, we can get a legal order barring him from contacting her or coming near your property. If he tries anything else, he will be arrested. It took 2 more weeks, but Fuller was as good as his word. A judge reviewed the case, declared the documents fraudulent, and issued a warrant for Harold's arrest if he returned to California. Word was sent to Kansas, alerting authorities there to his fraudulent activities. Ethan brought the legal papers home to Eleanor, who cried with relief when she read them. It is really over? It is really over. He cannot touch you. No one from your past can touch you. Ethan gathered her into his arms, mindful of Emma between them. You are safe, Eleanor, forever. The threat having passed strengthened them as a couple. Eleanor realized fully that Ethan would protect her and their family with everything he had, and that she did not have to face the world alone anymore. She began to let go of the last lingering fears, to trust completely in their life together. The years rolled by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children growing. Eddie learned to ride almost before he could walk properly, a natural horseman like his father. Emma was quieter, more studious, loving the books her mother read to her, and showing an early talent for drawing. In 1885, Eleanor gave birth to another son, James, who was loud and joyful from the moment he arrived. 2 years later came another daughter, Alice, who had red hair that appeared from nowhere in either family line and a temperament to match. The house they had built together, both literally and figuratively, was full of life and love. Ethan had expanded the original structure, adding more bedrooms and a proper dining room. The ranch was prosperous now, well known in the region for quality cattle and horses. Eleanor's teaching had grown into a regular school that met in a building Ethan built specifically for that purpose, serving children from miles around. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan took Eleanor into San Pedro for a rare evening alone. Sarah watched the children, shooing them away with insistence that they needed time together. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury they rarely indulged in, and walked along the harbor afterward, watching ships come in under the stars. Do you ever regret it? Ethan asked. Answering that advertisement? Coming all this way? Eleanor looked at him as if he had grown a second head. Regret it? Ethan, you gave me a life. A real life with love and purpose and safety. How could I possibly regret that? I just wanted to make sure. You have given up a lot living out here, raising a family, working so hard. I have not given up anything. I have gained everything. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. That day I stepped off the stage. I was certain I was making a terrible mistake, that I was trading one nightmare for another. Instead, I found a man who kept his promise. You said I would never get new bruises, and I have not. Not a single one. You have only ever given me gentleness and love. You make it easy, Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. And you have taught me how to love without fear, how to trust, how to be myself without apologizing for it. She reached up to cup his face. We have built something beautiful, Ethan. 4 children, a thriving ranch, a real partnership. I could not have imagined this 10 years ago. He kissed her there on the harbor walk, deep and sweet, not caring who might see. When they broke apart, she was smiling, that brilliant smile he loved so much. 10 more years, she said, and then 10 after that, and 10 after that, until we are old and gray and watching our grandchildren run around the ranch. That sounds perfect to me. They walked back to the hotel hand in hand, talking about their children, their plans for the ranch, their hopes for the future. The conversation flowed easily, the result of a decade of learning each other, of building trust and intimacy brick by brick. That night in the hotel room, they made love with the passion of newlyweds and the comfort of old friends, a combination that time and trust had created. Afterward, Eleanor lay with her head on Ethan's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling more content than she had ever imagined possible. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible, for being patient when I was broken, for loving me into wholeness. You were never broken, Ethan said, as he had said so many times before. Just hurt, and you healed yourself. I just had the privilege of being there to watch. The years continued their steady march. Eddie grew into a tall, serious young man who took to ranching with natural skill and dedication. At 18, he married a girl from town, Lily, and Ethan built them a house on the far end of the property, keeping the family close. Their first grandchild, a boy they named Ethan Jr., was born in 1895, making Ethan and Eleanor grandparents before they were even 40. Emma pursued her love of art, studying in San Francisco for 2 years before returning home to teach art alongside her mother's school. She married a banker from San Pedro, a kind man who supported her unconventional interests and creative spirit. James took after his father in temperament, steady and hardworking, but he surprised everyone by deciding he wanted to study veterinary medicine. Ethan and Eleanor supported his ambitions, proud of his desire to help animals, and sent him to school in Sacramento. He returned to set up a practice in San Pedro, becoming an invaluable resource for the ranching community. Alice, true to her fiery nature, became a suffragist, attending rallies and fighting for women's right to vote. Eleanor supported her fully, remembering what it was like to have no power or voice of her own. Ethan was proud of his daughter's passion, even when it made some of their more conservative neighbors uncomfortable. On a spring morning in 1898, 20 years after Eleanor had first arrived in San Pedro, Ethan and Eleanor sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun rise over the hills. They were both in their 40s now, their hair shot through with gray, their bodies marked by decades of hard work and good living. But they were healthy and strong, and more in love than ever. 20 years, Eleanor said softly. It feels like yesterday, and like forever, all at once. Best 20 years of my life, Ethan replied, and it just keeps getting better. Their children were settled and happy, their grandchildren were healthy, and the ranch was thriving beyond anything Ethan had dreamed of when he first came to California. But none of that mattered as much as the woman sitting beside him, her hand warm in his. Do you remember what you looked like when you stepped off that stage? Ethan asked. So scared and small, like you expected the world to hit you at any moment. I remember feeling like I was stepping into the unknown, not knowing if I would survive it. Eleanor squeezed his hand. I remember seeing you and thinking you looked kind, but being too afraid to trust it. And now? Now I know that kindness was real, that you were real, that this whole beautiful life is real. She turned to face him fully. You kept your promise, Ethan. Every single day for 20 years you kept your promise. I never got new bruises. You never raised your hand or your voice in anger. You treated me like a partner, an equal, someone worth loving. Because you are all those things. You always were. I know that now. It took time, but I finally believe it. And that is your gift to me. Not just the safety and the home and the children, though all of that is precious, but the belief that I am worthy of good things, that I deserve to be loved. Ethan pulled her close, kissing her temple. You deserve the world, Eleanor. I just did my best to give you a small piece of it. They sat together as the sun climbed higher, planning the day ahead, helping Eddie with a new foal that was due, checking on Emma's students in the art class, discussing James's proposal to expand his practice, and preparing for Alice's next rally in town. Their lives were full and busy, woven together with the lives of their children and grandchildren and the community they had become part of. But underneath all of it was the foundation they had built together, stone by careful stone, a partnership based on trust and respect, a love that had grown from tentative beginnings into something deep and enduring, a promise kept and treasured. That evening, after a long day of work and family and the thousand small tasks that made up their life, Ethan and Eleanor lay in bed together, comfortable in the darkness of their room. Eleanor traced patterns on Ethan's chest, a habit she had developed over the years, something that soothed them both. I was thinking today, she said quietly, about that first night I was here, how I locked my door because I was so afraid of you, of what you might do. I remember, I understood, even though it hurt to know you were that scared. And now look at us, 20 years later, and I cannot imagine sleeping anywhere but right here, safe in your arms. She pressed a kiss to his chest. You have given me more than I ever dared hope for, Ethan Xavier. We gave it to each other, he corrected gently. This life, this love, it is something we built together. You brought just as much to it as I did. I brought trauma and fear and a whole lot of broken pieces. You brought strength and courage and determination. You brought kindness and intelligence and a capacity for love that amazed me. You brought yourself, Eleanor, and that was always enough. She was quiet for a moment, and he felt the dampness of tears on his skin. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky. Right place, right time, right person. He tightened his arms around her. And I plan to keep getting lucky with you for many more years to come. At least 40 or 50 more, Eleanor agreed. I intend to be a very old woman, surrounded by great-grandchildren, still bossing you around. I look forward to it. They drifted towards sleep, comfortable and content, secure in the life they had made and the love they shared. The ranch was quiet around them, the night sounds familiar and soothing. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed softly. The wind whispered through the eaves. Their children and grandchildren slept in their own homes, safe and loved. And in the main house where it had all started, where a scared young woman with old bruises had once arrived, hoping only for survival, there was peace and joy, and a love story that had exceeded every expectation. Ethan had promised Eleanor she would never get new bruises, and he had kept that promise faithfully for 20 years. But he had given her so much more than safety. He had given her partnership, respect, passion, and a love that had healed wounds she had thought permanent. He had given her a family, a purpose, and a life worth living. And Eleanor had given him just as much in return. She had taken the ranch he was building and made it a home. She had filled his days with conversation and laughter and challenge. She had given him children who were a perfect blend of both of them, each one unique and precious. She had loved him fully and freely, teaching him depths of intimacy and connection he had only imagined. Together, they had created something that would last beyond them, a legacy of love and family that would ripple out through generations. Their grandchildren would tell stories about the couple who had defied the odds, who had turned a practical arrangement into a great love story. Their great-grandchildren would grow up on the land they had nurtured, benefiting from the foundation of respect and partnership they had established. But none of that mattered as much as the simple truth of two people who had found each other across distance and circumstance, who had chosen each other every single day, and who had built a life together that was richer than either had dared to dream. 20 years after a mail order, Bride had arrived in San Pedro, covered in old bruises. She slept peacefully in the arms of a man who loved her beyond measure, and she had never gotten a single new bruise from him or anyone else. That promise, kept faithfully through joy and struggle, through the mundane and the extraordinary, was the bedrock of everything they had become. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything